Hello, all. Our life has changed a lot over a period of time. And when I say time, I'm talking about the period much, much longer. I'm talking about the period when human beings came into existence. Have you ever wondered how it feels to live during the era of our ancestors? I'm talking about the Common Era, which is a combination of AD and BC. How do we know where we come from? I'm talking about the roots. From the stories from our grandparents or stories told by their grandparents passed on to us. What about the period before that? We can know from the scriptures, yes, to a certain extent. We can know from the inscriptions in temples, yes, to a certain extent. But what about the period before the temple was constructed? What about the period before these scriptures came into existence? That is where our literature comes in place, especially Sangam literature. We are talking about literature which came during the Common Era, a combination of AD and BC. And the work that we are going to deal with today belongs to the 2nd century of the Common Era. This work is called Purunaatrupadai. It talks about the earliest known king of the Chola dynasty. Where do you think we get our traits from? Traits as in characteristics. Don't you think we possess most of our characteristics from our ancestors? Well, all our traits are based on the behavior of our ancestors, and their behaviors were recorded in literature, and that is why there is a need to preserve literature today. When I say literature, I'm talking about Sangam literature, which gives us a rich, detailed account of how our ancestors lived, what all they had, and how we should follow a lot of things that they used to follow back then. Coming back to the work, today we are going to deal with translation of Porunaraatrupadai. Purunar refers to bards. Bards are artists who performed on the streets. They used to compose poems in simple language that was understandable for common people. And they even performed in front of the kings. And they used to volunteer to appear in the battlefront alongside of the king who went there. The army often carried these bards with them so that they can double as historians. Now we know how history was recorded, not in the books, not in temple inscriptions, but in the form of ballads or long poems. These poems gave a detailed picture of what happened in the battle, who fought very well, who the winner was, why the other side faced defeat. They also had another purpose, and for that particular purpose, these bards were never killed. They were sent back to their hometown. They were carriers of messages. They carried messages to the families of the deceased to tell how valiantly they fought. They used to give an account, a detailed account of the battle, and thus the same were recorded in the form of poems. Now we know our history is completely based on literature. With that, we are going to go into the introduction of the poem. Now, the term Porunaraatrupadai has a very deep meaning. Like I said, Porunar refers to a bard who records events based on battles or greatness of a particular king in the form of poem and presents the same to a wide audience, and most often in the streets. Aatrupadai refers to guide, to patronage. These poets did not make a living doing some other profession. This was their only profession, writing and singing, performing in front of the crowd. And they benefited when another group directed them to a king or a beneficiary who was in a position to give them some kind of monetary benefits. So, Purunaatrupadai means a guide to bards. Bards who were present in battlefronts. Purunaatrupadai is the second of the anthology named Patthupaatu. If you will remember, Pattu means 10 and Paatu means song. The first of Patthupaatu is Porunaraatrupadai. The second one is Porunaraatrupadai. This poem has got 248 lines and it's actually simpler compared to many other poems available from the Sangam era. But the language is so rich that one makes us wonder how a poet belonging to that period could write such rich language-filled poem. Purunaatrupadai is written by a poet called Mudathama Kanniyar. From the name, we can understand that Kanniyar might refer to a lady. We have no records of the poet, so we are not very sure of the gender of the poet. While some historians and scholars argue that this should definitely be a female poet, some feel that the term Kanniyar actually refers to the one who wears garland. So we are not very sure of the gender, and I don't see why we should know the gender. The songster's face is not important, the song is more important, and the song is perfect in every other way. So let us get into the poem and enjoy the same. Porunaraatrupadai. Ara ayaner agantale perur, சாறுகளி வழிநாள் சோறு நசை உறாது வேறுபுலம் முன்னிய விறகு அரி பொருனா. As you head to the ever-prosperous vast city, past the non-festive food offered, post those grand festivity with the desire to reach lands anew, O wise bard. We have to understand the setting of the poem before we actually get into the poem. We have a group of artists who have already met King Karikalan. They are bestowed with a lot of gifts. They are clad in rich silk. They are traveling on a very grandly decorated chariot. The chariot is fastened to 4 beautiful looking horses, and they all are bejeweled very rich fashion. And these people happen to meet another set of bards. These bards are just opposite to what they look like. They look very impoverished. They have torn clothes, they have dirtied look, they look very tired and fatigued. Now, they used to be a practice long back during the time when the poem was actually written. The war bards, when they had no battles going on, used to just perform the previous battles recorded in front of an audience. Whenever there was a festival going on in some town, these bards would go and perform. And in turn, the people in the village or the town would feed them with rich food, would give them gifts, whatever they were capable of giving. Otherwise, the bards used to suffer a lot with no support absolutely whatsoever. So we can understand why this particular set of bards are very impoverished, whereas the other set is very rich looking. So the two troupes meet at one point. The point of meeting happens to be the mid of a forest. The forest has a small shrine and it holds a goddess, the goddess of war. So I believe the setting is actually an old battlefront. Battlefronts used to have small shrines so that the kings could pray before they started their battles. And this shrine holds a goddess of war or Kotravai. And these impoverished bards go to goddess Kotravai and let their heart out to pray, asking her to get rid of the poverty that has struck them. And just like an answer to their prayers, these bards who have already received riches from Karikalan meet them. When they meet, this bard, the chief bard of the troupe that has already met the king, he immediately understands what exactly the situation is. And he addresses the chief of the other side directly. He calls him, "Oh, wise bard." He calls him a very wise person because he should understand the suffering of his troupe and take him to the right person. These people were full of pride. They would never accept anything in alms. They were not beggars. They would perform and in turn would get gifts. So he says that you hold your pride very highly. So it is time for you to lead your troupe to a place where your talents would be recognized and rewarded. பாலை யாழின் வருணனே, குழப்பு வழி அன்ன கவடுபட பத்தல், விளக்கு அழல் உருவின் விசியுறு பச்சை, எய்யா இளஞ்சோல் செய்யோள் அவ்வயிற்று, ஐது மயிரொழுகிய தோற்றம் போல, புல்லம் பொத்திய புதியுறு போர்வை, அலைவாள் அளவன் கண் கண்டன்ன, துளைவாய்த் துறந்த துறப்பு அமை ஆணி, எண்ணாள் திங்கள் வடிவிற்று ஆகி, அண்ணா வில்லா அமிவரு வருவாய், பாம்பு அனந்தன்ன ஓங்கு இரு மறுப்பின், மாயோள் முன்கை ஆய்த் தொடிக்கடுக்கும், கண்கூடு இருக்கை தின்பிணி திவவின், ஆய்த்தினை அசி அவையல் அன்ன, வேய்வை போகிய விரல் உலர் நரம்பின், கேள்வி போகிய நீள்விசி தொடையல், மணம் கமழ் மாதரை மன்னி அன்ன, அணங்குமே நின்ற அமைவரு காட்சி, ஆரலை கள்வர் படைவிட அருளின், மாறுதலை பெயர்க்கும் மருவியின் பாலை. We are going to get a description of the palai yaal. Yaal refers to a lute or a harp that the bards carried along with them. It is a stringed instrument, and the poet is going to give us a detailed description of how the large lute looks like. The classy harp, split in two like a stag's hoof, flame-tinged stretched leather proof, much like an early baby bump of a dame, coated with delicate and fine hair same, covered and fastened like a lid so firm, with tiny holes like gaping crabby eyes, shiny nails driven in tight and nice, shaped like the moon's eighth crescent, the mouth sans tongue present, the stem raised like cobra's hood, like bracelets in the dainty dark wrists, those tightly tied frets. Not even a millet grain-sized ground, sans error as fingers strum found, still wound tight after the strum stops, composed like a newly-wed dame, and stood like a goddess in all her fame. Even coarser bandits' hearts do melt, as those strings on harp reverberate. Here, the poet, that is the bard who has already met King Karikalan, happens to see that the impoverished bards carry a large lute. Lutes or harps are stringed instruments. There were varieties of harps available during the ancient times, and mostly they were named after their sizes, shapes, or the place of origin. And in this case, it is a palai yaal. Palai refers to desert, and yaal, of course, is lute. So, it is a lute made of wood available in the deserts. And this palai yaal has got 21 strings. And because of its huge size, it is also called a peri yaal. Peri means big, and yaal, of course, is lute. So, it's either a peri yaal or a palai yaal. And this huge instrument is carried by the impoverished bards. So, how does it actually look like? The poet notices that the drum of the harp, now this yaal is somewhat similar in shape and size to that of a veena. Now, if you will recollect, a veena has a pear-shaped drum. It has a long bridge, and there is a spherical drum connected on the other end. And often veenas have got the tip curved, shaped like a yali, a mythological creature. Whereas the yaal has a larger pear-shaped drum. It has a curved bridge, and at the end of the bridge, usually the bards used to tie feathers of peacocks just for decoration. One difference between a veena and a yaal, especially a peri yaal, is that the yaal doubled as a perigai, a drum, rather a war drum, while the veena's pear-shaped drum is completely made of wood. A peri yaal has its bottom made of wood, whereas it is covered, stretched with newly tanned leather. And on this piece of leather, the strings that are connected to the bridge are actually connected. How many strings do we have? We have 21 strings. Because of its huge size, of course, it is called the peri yaal, and it is made of wood got from deserts, and hence it is called palai yaal also. The poet compares the newly tanned leather with its fine, delicate hair to that of the belly of a pregnant woman. The baby bump at an early stage will look very beautiful, and often the baby bump would be covered with small, delicate hair. So the poet is reminded of a baby bump of a woman when he sees the Periyal's drum. And he takes a look at the knobs that are connecting the bridge and the string. He compares the knobs with the eyes of crabs that he has seen on seashore. If you had been to the beach, you might have seen small crabs struttering across, and their eyes are compared to the knobs on the large lute. With several descriptions like this, he even compares the bridge to that of the raised hood of a cobra. He says it is so curved, and at the end, when it opens its hood, it looks exactly like a cobra that is standing in full length, curved shape. So, there is a beautiful description given by the poet about the Palai yaal. When talking about the music that it produces, the poet says that despite its huge size, the yaal produces the most melodious tunes of all instruments. And he says that even a person who is very, very crude, even a bandit, a robber, will feel his heart melting when he listens to the music that flows from the Palayal. So, what else has the poet observed? We shall move ahead with the poem. யாழை வாசிக்கும் முறை வாரியும் வடித்தும் உந்தியும் முரழ்ந்தும் சீருடை நன்மொழி நீரொடு சிதறி. Strum the strings, so stroke and strum and pluck those strings to bend the mellifluous symphony as nature sings. Now, there are different types of yaals available, and as I told already, it is mostly based on the size, shape, or the place of origin. Whereas the strings are all made of metal. Now, these strings all produce similar sounds, but because of the size and shape of the yaals, they may reverberate more or less. For example, the periyal produces a very resonating sound, but a serial refers to a smaller lute, which is very, very small in size, very compact to hold. It produces a very sharp note. So the poet says that there are different types to play, different methods to play a lute. One can either stroke the strings mildly, or just strum it, or pluck those strings severely to produce booming sounds, or sometimes they even bend the string and release it suddenly so that a deeper note will be produced. So he explains how bards usually play the large lute. The poet moves his eyes from over the lute to somebody else who is standing near the chief of the bard. Who is it? Well, it's going to be a gift for eyes. பாடினியின் வருணனை. அரல் போல் கூந்தல் பிறை போல் திருநுதல் கொலைவில் புருவத்து கொழுங்கடை மழைக்கண் இளவிதழ் புரையும் இன்மொழி துவர்வாய் பல உரு முத்தின் பழித்தீர் வெண்பல் மயிர்குறை கருவி மான்கடையன்ன பூங்குழை ஊசல் பொறைசால் காதின் நானடை சாய்ந்த நலங்கிளர் எருத்தின் ஆடு அமைப்பனை தோள் அரிமயிர் முன்கை நெடுவரை மிசையிய காந்தள் மெல் விரல் கிளிவாய் ஒப்பின் ஒளிவிடு வள் உகிர் அணங்கென உறுத்த சுனங்கனி ஆகத்து ஈர்க்கிடை போகா ஏரிள வனமுலை நீர்பெயர் சுழியின் நிறைந்த கொப்புள் உண்டென உணரா உயவும் நடுவின் வண்டு இருப்பு அன்ன பல்காள் அல்குல் இரும்பிடி தடக்கையின் செறிந்து திரள் குரங்கின் பொருந்து மயிரொழுகிய திறந்து தாட்கு ஒப்ப வருந்து நாய் நாவின் பெருந்தரு சீரடி அறக்கு உருக்கு அன்ன செந்நிலன் ஒதுங்கலின் பரல் பகை உழந்த நோயொடு சிவனி மரல் பழுத்தன்ன மருகு நீர் மொக்குள் நண்பகல் அந்தி நடையிடை விலங்கிலின் பெடைமயில் உருவின் பெருந்தொகு பாடினி. The bewitching belladier. The poet notices that the bard's troupe has only one woman amidst all men, and she is the wife of the chief of the impoverished bard troupe. She is very beautiful to look at, and the poet is unable to stop himself from describing her beauty. The bewitching belladier. Voluminous groves of tresses, crescently bowed forehead, killer bow brows, compassionate beady eye, the perfect ridge over juicy scarlet lips that never lie, that hold cursedly cute pearly teeth, the scissory lock along her ear, feathery danglers swinging from there, svelte neck, pent of coyness and fair, sturdy bamboo-like arms with fine delicate hair, slender long fingers like flame lilies, sharp beak like painted fingernails, deep cleave where courage fails, curvaceous breasts pressed against each other and full, like unfathomed whirlpool, the novel navel, that invisibly slim waist in the mid, the sweet Venus mound inviting buzzing bees, set on thick and strong thighs wave with ease, smooth furry haired, shapely pedicle, those tender feet like wet dry tongue of a tired mongrel, melt like pinkish wax on scorching sand, and on malicious pebbles strewn on the soil that causes such painful ripe boil. Walk not during the steaming day, thou bewitchingly beautiful peafowl like belladier. The poet here says how beautiful the woman is to look at. She has perfect features, and anybody will understand that she has been suffering a lot because her feet are full of blisters. The woman has beautiful forehead, she has beady eyes, sharp eyebrows, and her neck is bent out of shyness. She feels shy because she is meeting a group of strangers. That is typical of any woman. And he says that looking at the poor woman's feet, it feels as if they are very delicate, like the dry tongue of a very tired dog. And it's full of boils because they have made her walk under hot sun. There are no shades because all the trees are bare. It is the peak of summer. So obviously there are no leaves in sight that can produce any shade. This woman, poor woman, has walked over pebbles, burning soil, and her feet are ready to bleed. So he says that the bard should not have traveled under hot sun. They should have waited until the sun set and then could have traveled further because the poor woman was suffering. We have met our beauty and we have met our impoverished bards. What else is the poet going to tell them more? வழிபடுத்தும் பொருணன் பாடின பாணிக்கு ஏற்ப நாள்தோறும் களிறு வழங்க அதற்கானத்து அல்கி இலையில் மராத்த எவ்வம் தாங்கி வலைவலந்தன்ன மின்னிழல் மருங்கில் காடு உரை கடவுள் கடன் கழிப்பிய பின்றை. The word bard shows the way. The bard sings in tune with the songstress all day long, where pachyderms about in the jungle deep throng, that hold sleeveless cadamba trees that grieve, the cast net-like shades almost not, move post prayers to the forest gods the lot. So he starts giving directions to the other troupe on how to move ahead to erase their poverty. The first step that he directs is to pray to the forest god because they are going to travel a lot inside deep jungle where elephants roam about freely. So he says it is better to pray before they begin their journey. So where are they supposed to go? He continues. பீடு கெழுத்திருவின் பெரும் பெயர் நோந்தாள் முரசு முழங்க தானை மூவரும் கூடி அரசவை இருந்த தோற்றம் போல பாடல் பற்றிய பயனுடைய எழால் கோடியர் தலைவ கொண்டது அறின அறியாமையின் நெறித்தெரிந்து ஒராது ஆற்ற எதிர்ப்படுத்தலும் நோற்றதன் பயனே போற்றி கேண்மதி புகழ் மேம்படுனா. The wealthy pride, fame, and immense efforts as you beat the drums for the three crowned kings, presented fit for the royal court stings, the lute that reflects the song's lesson. O chief of the bards, their thoughts in session, not letting ignorance make them lose way. Fortune made us meet to benefits immense. Listen to what I have to say, it's your penance. So now he starts saying that they are impoverished only to look at. But in reality, their talent makes them extremely rich, wealthy. So he calls them, you are very, very wealthy. You have got a pride unmatched. So you have to reach the right place and get a recognition for your pride and talent. He says that the bards would definitely have accompanied several popular kings. They would have seen lot of courts, they would have seen lot of variety of people, and now they are in a very pitiable position. But this is soon to end. And the poet says that pride is one thing, but it should never come in the way of other people's betterment, because they depend on us to live a good life. He says that it is time he listened to his advice and lead his troop to a place where they would be recognized and rewarded. Moving ahead, ஆடு பசி உழந்த நின் இரும்பேர் ஒக்கலொடு நீடு பசி ஒரா அல் வேண்டின் நீடு இன்று எழுமதி வாழி ஏழின் கிழவ பழுமரம் உள்ளிய பறவையின் யானும் அவன் இழுமென் சும்மை இடனுடைய வரைப்பின் நசையுணர்ந்தடையா நன்பெருவாயில் இசையேன் புக்கு என் இடும்பை தீர எய்த்த மெய்யென எய்யேன் ஆகி பைத்த பாம்பின் துத்தி எய்ப்ப கை கசடு இருந்த என் கண்ணகன் தடாரி இரு சீர்பாணிக்கு ஏற்ப விரிகதிர் வெள்ளி முளைத்த நள்ளிருள் விடியல் ஒன்றியான் பெட்ட அளவியின் ஒன்றிய. To ease your large troops' ravenous hunger, rise and march, not to forget and wander. Long live you, chief of septa-stringed lute, like birds with fruity dreams. You and I march towards white palace yards with loud sigh. Those that never block seek us, huge gates. I ventured inside freely to change my fates, to change that weakened body to a cheerful one, like the spotted hood that is spread, marks and prints on my white drum's head. Beats double sounded to match the shine of the pretty Venus on the night sky fine. Before my heart's song was done, and the poet leaves us hanging over there. He explains how he went to the palace. He says that the palace yard is very wide and there are tall, huge gates which stand as guards. There are plenty of soldiers who stand by the gates, but none of them would stop bards like him who has come over there to seek patronage with the great king. So he says that the bard's troop can freely walk inside the palace gates and start beating their drum. He recollects what he did. He had a small palm drum with him, whereas our impoverished bard here has a septa-stringed lute, which is the yaal. So we can understand that the lead singers of bards usually carried compatible compact instruments that accompanied their songs. This they used to play while they sang and danced as a performance in front of an audience. So while this person had a septa-stringed lute, that is 7-stringed lute, our poet who has already met Karikalan took a palm drum with him to meet the king. He says that after having beaten the palm drum for over a long period of time, the drum's leather had his fingerprints on it. So he had just begun to beat the drum when he was stopped abruptly. Why and who asked him to stop? அரசனின் விருந்தோம்பும் பண்பு கேளிர் போல கேள்கொளல் வேண்டி வேளாண் வாயில் வேட்பக் கூறி கண்ணில் காண நன்னுவழி இரியே பருகு அன்ன அருகா நோக்கமோடு உருகுபை போல் என்பு குளிர்கொளியி ஈரும் பேனும் இருந்து இறை கூடி வேரோடு நனைந்து வேற்று இலை நுழைந்த துன்னல் சிதார் துவர் நீக்கி நோக்கு நுழைக்கல்லா நுண்மய பூக்கனிந்து அரவு உரி அன்ன அருவை நல்கி. The king's magnanimity. Rushed he with oneness, thirst for loving kinship, with unmatched geniality spoke his kingship. Made me stay well within his reach and sight. As I drank, he looked with loveful eyes pure like white. A gaze that melts and chills heart with love, as I stood clad in lice-infested loin cloth that was wet with sweat, severely patchy cloth, snatched and discarded away from my sight, newest garment with flowers patterned bright, shiny like serpent skin he did clad me in. He recounts how the king himself came out of the palace to welcome him and his troop. This is what hospitality is all about. This is where we get our hospitable nature from. Our ancestors did not bother about the class to which our guests belong to. They often went out of the way to welcome them, to make them feel comfortable. And even today, if somebody comes, we obviously don't sit inside a room. We go outside the house, receive them, feed them good food, and make sure they are absolutely comfortable. And so here, when the bard reached the palace yard, the king, who came to know that a set of troop, a bard's troop has come over there, he rushed outside and welcomed them. And King did not even flinch at the sight of the dirty bard. He had traveled a distance, so he looked very dirty. His clothes had torn, and the clothes were patched up in all sorts of places, and they were infested with lice and bugs. The clothes were dripping with his sweat, but the king did not even flinch an eye. Instead, he showed them his loving side. The king looked upon the bard and his troop in a very genial way that it completely made them feel at ease. And as soon as they were invited inside the palace, the king made sure that they were well clothed. So they gave them a set of refreshments, and after that, their old garments were replaced with good shiny ones. And the garments looked like very rich silk, and the poet compares the material to the soft, shiny skin of a snake. The king really is magnanimous. There's a story linked to explain how magnanimous King Karikalan was. Even at a very young age, Karikalan had to fight two different kings from two different clans. One was from the Chera dynasty and the other one was from the Pandya dynasty. Now, these two kings were joining hands to fight young Karikalan. Karikalan did not even bat an eyelid. He fought them really very hard and used a smart way to defeat them. After the battle got over, he invited a lot of bards and poets to sing praise of the battle that got him victory. The story goes like this. Amidst the lot of poets who visited the court after the battle, there was one female poet, and she was invited to sing in praise of King Karikalan. While other poets sang in praise of the king, glorifying him, the victory he had at the battlefront, this poetess sang other way around. She called him the loser. This shocked the entire court, and people started scolding her. Are you mad? How can you call the king who has just come back from the battlefront victorious? You're calling him a loser. She insisted, no, he is a loser. And so who's the winner? The king himself asked. Who do you think is the winner if it is not for me? The poetess boldly replied, the Chera king who fought against you, who bore the arrow that you shot on his chest, starved himself to death. You did not kill him, your arrow did not kill him, whereas he starved himself to death and died proudly. He is the hero, he is the winner of the battle, she said. Isn't it not intriguing? Yes. What happened in the battle was this. Karikalan set up a plan. He split the troops in such a way that he would face to face meet the Chera king. As soon as he met the king, the battle became fiercer. He was face to face and he shot an arrow which pierced the heart of the Chera king and came out of his back. According to battle strategies, a person who has received wounds on his back is considered to be a coward. The Chera king did not want to tag that he was a coward, even though the arrow passed through his chest and it had only come back out of his back. He did not want that bad name. So what he did was he collected all his courage, went out of the battlefield, sat in a position of penance and starved himself to death. And when this story came flashing across his mind, Karikalan bowed his head to the poetess and said, yes, you are right. I am the loser and Chera king is the winner. Such is the humility of the king who boldly accepted that he had only won the battle but not morality. Saying this, the poetess really got awarded for her bravery and her poetic wisdom. கள் கொடுத்தல் மழையென மருளும் மகிழ்செய் மாடத்து இளையணி வகுப்பின் இன்னகை மகளிர் போக்கியில் புலங்கலம் நிறைந்த பல்கால் வாக்குப தரத்தர வருத்தம் வீட ஆற உண்டு பேரஞர் போக்கி செருக்கோடு நின்ற காலை மற்ற அவன் திருக்கிளர் கோயில் ஒரு சிறை தங்கி தவம் செய் மாக்கள் தம் உடம்பை இடாது அதன் பயம் எய்திய அளவை மான ஆறு செல் வருத்தம் அகல நீக்கி ஆனந்தர் நடுக்கம் அல்லது யாவும் மனம் கவல்ப்பு இன்றி மாமாழ்ந்து எழுந்து. Honeydew served. Dark-haired like the rain cloud shroud came beauty incarnate dames smiling sweetly and loud, with golden goblets constantly filled. Again and again they served as sorrow spilled. Gulped and booze till spill sorrow's loss, stood I dazed with joy in place that is his. On the rich side where I had littless biz, like great sages who shun their earthly body to attain higher stances that embody, discard their ways and sorrows in full, sans tremble nor a little shake. A state of confusion I dozed to wake. The poet says how he was served with a lot of different drinks before they were served with food items. He recollects lot of beautiful women coming over to serve them with freshly cultured honeydew. Honeydew is somewhat similar to wine, which is molasses fruit juices. So over here, molasses flower nectar are combined with tobacco and honeydew was created. Now they were served with honeydew that was freshly cultured. So he felt it was tasty and they kept on drinking and their glasses were constantly filled. And the glasses were not ordinary ones, they were golden goblets. And he was so dazed that he felt all his sorrows being wiped out. Strangely enough, the poet compares the state of intoxication with a sage who is doing a penance. Just like how in intense penance, sages leave their earthly body behind and wander around the world, the poet says that he had a similar liberation. As soon as he started taking a lot of honeydew, he felt the same. His soul felt light and he was very jubilant and he knew that his poverty was coming to an end. And strangely enough, the poet also recollects that the next morning when he woke up, he did not have a hangover at all. He felt fit and sober. So the poet really had a very good experience. Moving ahead with the poem, Malayum Kalayum. மாலை அன்னது ஓர் புன்மையும் காலை கண்டோர் மருளும் வண்டு சூழ்நிலையும் கனவு என மருண்ட என் நெஞ்சு ஏமாப்ப வல்லஞர் பொத்திய மனம் மகிழ் சிறப்ப கல்லா இளைஞர் சொல்லிக் காட்ட கதுமென கரைந்து வம் என கூய் அதன் முறை கழுப்பிய பின்றை பதன் அறிந்து. Dusk and dawn. The dusk which darkened us poorly on befuddled even bees to our brightest at dawn, pulling up not wanting it to be a dream, erasing sorrow to fill with joy, showed me to the king, the wordless boy. Come here, boomed his majesty so loudly, post all set formalities, a gesture very timely. The next day when the poet and his troupe woke up, like I already told, they felt very sober. So they dressed themselves up, they cleaned themselves up, they freshened up, and they were led to the court by a boy who seemed to be an illiterate. He had nothing to say about them at all. He introduces them to the king. King was very happy to see them. The poet mildly recollects being surrounded by buzzing bees, and he thinks maybe the bees are around him because of the honeydew that he had the previous night. He recollects how booming and loud the king's voice was. The king asked him to come closer, he being the chief of the bards. அரசன் உணவளித்த பாங்கு. துராஐ துற்றிய துருவை அம்புழுக்கின் பரா அறைவேவை பருகு என தண்டி காளின் சுட்ட கோள் ஊன் கொழுங்குறை ஊழின் நூலின் வாய் வைத்து ஒற்றி அவை அவை முனிகுவம் எனினே சுவைய வேறு பல் உருவின் விறகு தந்து ஈரி மண்ணமை முழவின் பண்ணமை சீரியாள் ஒண்ணுதல் விரலியர் பாணி தூங்க மகிழ்ப்பதும் பல்நாள் கழிப்பி ஒரு நாள் அவிழ்ப்பதம் கொள்க என்று இறப்ப மகிழ்த்தகை முறவை போகிய முறியா அரிசி விரல் என நிமிர்ந்து நிரல் அமைப்புழுக்கள் பரல்வரை கருணை காடியின் மிதப்ப அயின்ற காலை பயின்று இனிது இருந்து கொல்லை உழு கொழு ஏய்ப்ப பல்லே எல்லையும் இரவும் ஊன் தின்று மழுங்கி உயிர்ப்பிடம் பெறாது ஊன் முனிந்து. The Lord served me finest grass-fed fat sheep's meat, so thick, cooked well, too tempting to resist. Fatty chunks roasted as hot iron hissed, blown on and on to cool them down, again and again turned them down, as varieties of desserts were piled on plates, as the midget lute played and copper drums beat, chorused with the singers and dancers' painted feet. Days rolled on to weeks when one day, "Have some more cooked rice," I heard him say. Finely pounded, unbroken jasmine white rice, every grain of same size, long and boiled well. Hard fried yam cooked with tang, I can tell. As I stayed and ate my fill sans worry, my teeth set to munch on like a quarry, munched on all odd meat till they blunted out, with no time to rest, food so despicable one day. The poet recounts what sort of food was served to him and his troupe in the palace and how it was served to them. He says that fat sheep meat was served along with long white grain rice, and the food that they were served with was fit enough for a feast to the king himself. They were not spared being mere bards. They were treated equal to that of the king himself. And while they ate and drank, they were accompanied by the musicians of the court. There were singers who sang with the accompaniments of the instruments. There were dancers who sang to the songs that were being sung. And these people were served with rich food every single day of their stay. The poet is trying very hard to recollect or count the number of days they had been living in the palace, but he is not able to do so. And wittingly he says he had been munching on food for a very long time, that his teeth started becoming blunt. He also says that usually it is the plow which goes over the land which produces paddy and rice grain, whereas over here, paddy and rice grain is being plowed over by teeth. And at one point he says that they started hating the food that was being served to them. This is because they did absolutely nothing. They simply ate, drank, made merry. And this was quite boring. They also were conscious about the people who they had left back at home. Moving over with the poem, தம்மூர் செல்ல முனைந்த புருணன் ஒரு நாள் செயிர்த்து எழுத்தெவ்வர் திரைத்துறை போகிய செல்வா சேரும் எம் தொல் பதிப்பெயர்ந்து என மெல்லென கிளந்தனமாக வல்லே அகரிரோ எம் அயம் விட்டு என சீரியவன் போல் செயிர்த்த நோக்கமோடு துடியடி அன்ன தூங்கு நடை குழுவியோடு பிடிப்புணர்வேழம் பெட்டவை கொள்க என தன் அரியளவையின் தரத்தரையானும் என் அரியளவையின் வேண்டுவ முகந்து கொண்டு இன்மை தீர வந்தனன். Permission to head back home. Oh dear peeved protector who keeps foes at bay, rich and valued lord, do let us take leave. As we did softly stutter, we heard him heave, "My kin, how soon thou leave my abode," he said. With love-filled anger he did retort, "Take my drum-footed mammoths and their calves in resort, and their mates too, with all that you desire," he urged. And more on has he piled, as we submerged, but took only what we could and need be, just to end our age-old poverty. Here the poet recollects how one day he plucked up the courage to inform the king that he has to head back to his home, to his people who are waiting for him to come back. And so he sent word to the king, saying softly that he would like to go back home. He recollects with joy and mixed feelings how the king reacted. The king had love-filled anger in him. He was so angry that they were leaving so very soon. At the same time, it showed his attachment towards the bards' troupe. The king said that they were leaving very soon and he did not want them to leave at all. But when the poet insisted on leaving, the king, being very generous, offered his mammoths, that is elephants, along with their calves, and several more gifts for them to carry. Not being satisfied with that, the king asked him to take whatever he wanted to. But the poet says that he did not want to act very selfish or very greedy. And so he took whatever was necessary, whatever would help his people back home, and was ready to leave the palace. Karikalan Sirappugal. Venvel Uruva Pahrer Ilayon Sirvan, முருகன் சீற்றத்து உருகெழு குருசில் தாய் வயிற்றிலிருந்த தாயம் எய்தி எய்யாத்தெவ்வர் ஏவல் கேட்ப செய்யார் தேயம் தெருமரல் கலிப்ப பவ்வ மீமிசை பகல் கதிர் பரப்பி வெவ்வெங் செல்வன் விசும்பி படர்தாங்கு பிறந்த தவள் கற்றதன் தொட்டு சிறந்தனல் நாடு செகின் கொண்டு நாள்தோறும் வளர்ப்ப ஆளினான்மான் அணங்குடை குருளை மீளி மொய்ப்பின் மிகுவலி செருக்கி முலை கோள்விடா மாத்திரை நெரேரென தலைக்கொள் வேட்டம் களிறு அட்டாங்கு இரும்பனம் போந்தை தோடும் கருஞ்சினை அறவாய் மேம்பின் அம்குலை தெரியலும் ஓங்குயிரென் சென்னி மேம்பட மிளைந்த இரு பெரு வேந்தரும் ஒரு களத்து அவிய வெண்ணி தாக்கிய வெறுவரு நோந்தாள் கண்ணார் கண்ணிக் கரிகால் வளவன். Here we get the title reveal. The hero of the poem, the actual hero of the poem. It's not the bard whom we met at the beginning. It's not the bard who is returning from the king, but it is the king himself, King Karikalan. The story of how Karikalan came to receive such a worldwide fame is quite interesting. The Chola dynasty always had a very close relationship with another clan who lived on the mountains. They were called the Velirs. And to maintain a very smooth relationship, the Chola dynasty often married into people from Velir clan. Velir clan always stood by the side of Cholas in every battlefront. They even served as guards and heads to guards, trainers of their army at various stages. Early back then, we are talking about the 2nd century of the Common Era, roughly around 130 of the Common Era. Now, back then, Chola dynasty was under the control of a king named Ilam Cheni. The king married a Velir princess and both begot a child, which is young Karikalan. When Karikalan was just a baby, King Ilam Cheni died at a battlefront. And this was the time when the entire kingdom was in a turmoil. Enemies had taken over the kingdom and they imprisoned the queen and young Karikalan. They even set fire to the prison so that the entire Chola dynasty would be wiped off clean. Luckily for Karikalan, his uncle named Irumpittar Talayan risking his life, brought the child out of the prison and trained him up to become a great warrior that he was. Unfortunately, he was not unharmed in the fire. One of his legs was completely charred and thus he got the name Karikalan. Kari means charred, Kalan means the one with leg. So he became the one with charred leg. The word Karikalan also has another meaning. Kari refers to elephant. Kalan refers to Lord of Death. So when he went into the battlefield riding an elephant, it looked as if the Lord of Death was riding the elephant. And so both the terms, both the meanings fit him perfectly. Still, after his training with his uncle, Karikalan was quite young. People did not have confidence that such a young fellow could take over the kingdom. A dynasty was very, very old, which was rich in heritage. But Karikalan proved them all wrong, cleared their doubts by challenging the 2 great kings who stood against him. It is to be noted that the Velir clan, who always stood by Chola's side, unfortunately switched sides at this particular battle, the Battle of Venni. Venni is the present day's Kovilvenni, a place, a small town which is in south of India. It is in this place, that is in Venni, a fierce battle took place. It was one against many, and the two important heads who opposed King Karikalan was the Pandyas and the Cheras. The Pandya king's name is not known, whereas the Chera king's name was Udiyan Cheralathaan. Now Karikalan set a very beautiful plan and he executed the same in the battlefront. What he did was he split the entire army in such a way that each part of his army was dealing with smaller part of the opposite army. And so, being equally distributed, it was easier to face the enemies even though he had very less number of warriors. And at a very crucial point, he was face to face with Udiyan Cheralathaan. King Karikalan was on top of an elephant, and so was King Udiyan. Both were face to face, and at a blink of an eye, our King Karikalan shot a very powerful arrow on Udiyan. Unfortunately, the arrow pierced his chest and came off the back. Here, the battle strategies very clearly state that a person who is wounded on his back is obviously tagged as a coward. Our Cheralathaan is not a coward. He was facing King Karikalan. But still, he did not want the backstab wound to be shown in the history. And so, what he did was, he walked out of the battlefront, he accepted defeat, but starved himself to death instead of facing death in the hands of enemy. He did not want people to think that he had died as a coward. He did not want people to think of him as an incapable warrior. And so the brave Cheralathaan walked out of the battlefront. And with Cheras completely vanquished, Pandyas started losing their strength and courage. Slowly, the opposite party started losing their power, and Karikalan took over the battlefront from there and completely wiped them out. He emerged as the victorious heir to the throne of Cholas. He is the most popular of all Cholas, and he is quoted as a very great example to all the popular Chola kings from then on. And he says that as valiant as the king is, he is generous as well. He compares the king's valiance to that of a yali. Yali is a mythological creature that resembles a lion, but it's much larger and it has the features of several other ferocious animals as well. It is said that a yali, even as a cub, while still feeding from its mother, will be so ferocious that it can hunt down huge elephants. So he compares this cub of a yali to Karikalan, who was very brave at a very young age. So with that, we shall move ahead with the poem and see what more the poet has to say. Aatrupadum Purunan தாழ்நிழல் மருங்கின் அணுகுபு குறுகி தொழுது முன் நெருக்குவிர் ஆயின் பழுது இன்று ஈற்று ஆவிருப்பின் போற்றுபு நோக்கி நும் கையது கேடா அளவை பொய்யென பாசிவேரின் மாசொடு குறைந்த துண்ணல் சிதா அர் நீக்கி தூய கொட்டை கரைய பட்டுடை நல்கி பெரல் அருங்கலத்தில் பொட்டாங்கு உண்க என பூக்கமல் தேரல் வாக்குபு தர வைக்கல் வைக்கல் கைகவி பொருகி ஏரி அகைந்தன்ன ஏடுயில் தாமரை சுரீரும் பித்தை பொலிய சூட்டி நூலின் வலவா நுணங்கு அரில் மாலை வாலொளி முத்தமொடு பாடினி அணிய கோட்டின் செய்த கொடுஞ்சி நெடுந்தேர் ஊட்டு உளை துயல் வர ஓரி நுடுங்க பால் புரைப்புறவி நால்குடன் பூட்டி காலின் ஏழ் அடிப்பின் சென்று கோலின் தாறு களைந்து ஏறு என்று ஏற்றி வீறு பெரு பேர்யாழ் முறையளி கழிப்பி நீர்வாய் தன் பனை தளிய தளரா இருக்கை நன்பல் ஊர நாட்டோடு நன்பல் வேறுருப்பறை நுவலும் பருவுப் பெருந்தடக்கை வேறு வரு செலவின் வெகுளி வேளம் தரவு இடை தங்கள் ஓவிலனே வரவிடை பெற்றவை பிறர் பிறர்க்கு ஆர்த்தி தெற்றென்ன செலவு கடை கூட்டுதிர் ஆயின் பல புலந்து நில்லா உலகத்த நிலைமை தூக்கி செல்க என விடுகவன் அல்லன். Here the poet summarizes and reminds the bard of what he is to expect from the king. What sort of entry, what sort of welcoming, and what are the gifts that he might get from the king. So he is summarizing the whole event so that they will be prepared to face whatever is to come. The guiding bard. As you stand by his feet under his kind shade, stay and beseech and let your distress fade. Like a cow's cooling gaze at its new young calf, sooner than you showcase your skills even half. Like the spread of moss on dirt with very little space, left to be patched, your rags be replaced with pure silk that's new with knots and laced, gold and silver wares for you to eat from, redolent floral wine served again to foam, every day as you try to evade, but relish, as the golden lotus glowing bright is placed on your thick wavy hair that's tight, not by wools, but with gold the strands of garland, for your fair dazzling dame singer who by you stand. Those huge chariots with ivory carved, the swishing tufts of ponytails dyed, those whitest of horses fastened and tied. He steps back a foot and 7, took off gold as we climbed the elevation. He would send off with drums and horns blaring. Through his greenest farms with gushing water and fineries and riches of the land you will encounter. Fearsome pachyderms rose from trunks curvy, so intense as they walk with storms so fairy. Amongst the gifts showered by benevolence incarnate, all that you got, if desired to share, tell him of your desire to homeward fare. The sad self in the shifting world does not let you leave as his loving words unfold. Here, the poet says that the king would come out with a golden lotus for the chief of the bard. He will gift the ladies with lot of jewels and golden string garlands. And not enough with that, he will also gift them with chariots loaded with jewels and lot more gifts. The chariots will come along with white horses, and he will also give few of his elephants as gifts for them to carry homeward. The poet says that he can stay there as long as he wants to, but he must always remember to head back home. And while doing so, he should send word to the king so that he will send them off properly. Shall move ahead. சோழ நாட்டு வளம் ஒல்லென திரை பிறழிய இரும்பிளவர்த்து கரை சூழ்ந்த அகன் கிடக்கை மாமாவின் வயின்னெல் தாழ்தாளை தன் தண்டலை கூடு கெளிய குடிவைனான் செஞ்சோற்ற பலி மாந்திய கருங்காக்கை கவவு முனையின் மனைநொச்சி நிழல் ஆங்கன் ஈற்று யாமை தன் பார்ப்பு ஓம்பவும் இளையோர் வண்டல் அயரவும் முதியோர் அவை புகு பொழுதில் தம் பகை முரண் செலவும் முடங்காஞ்சி செம்மருதின் மடக்கண்ணமயில் ஆல பைம்பாகற் பழம் துணறிய செஞ்சுளை கனிமாந்தி அரைக்கரும்பின் அரிநெல்லின் இனக்களமர் இசை பெருக வரல் அடும்பின் இவர் பகன்றை தளிர்புன்கின் தாழ்காவின் நனைஞாலமோடு மரம் குழிய அவன் முனையின் நகன்று மாறி அவள் தளவின் அகந்தோன்றி நகுமுல்லை உகுதேருவி பொன்கொன்றை மணியா காயா நற்புறவின் நடை முனையின் சுரவழங்கும் இரும்பெருவளத்து இரவு அருந்திய இனநாரை பூம்புன்னை சினை சேப்பின் ஓங்கு திரை ஒலிவெறி. In these lines, the poet gives us a detailed description of the various assets of Chola kingdom. He records a very detailed description of various natural elements that he came across while returning back after receiving gifts from Karikalan. The assets of Chola kingdom. The roars of the rolling ocean waves, the kingdom as wide across the ocean shores. Wide and immeasurable in every inch paddy stores, lush and tall swaying coconut groves, the farmers group with paddy silos, who serve with red grain rice for those darkest ravens that shun and fly homeward to shady Lucoxylon, that hold the hatchlings of tortoise saved, as kids building sandcastles noisily played The elders chatted with differences as mob under the widespread bent rosewood and Arjuna tree, while glorious fine-eyed peacocks danced free. Where huge jackfruits ripen in clusters, the scarlet fruit eaten till one dulls and falters, farmers bent harvesting cane and paddy, worked hand in hand as they chorused in unison. Goat's foot vines and rattle pods and jallops spread on. Low-lying cluttered beaches grow with buds of cassia and tiger claw and many more. If they bore you, just drift away towards golden jasmines and glory lilies, white bright smiling jasmines and strewn flowers of nut trees, strings of golden rains and sapphire blue memicelon, and that would soon bore you, so move on. To where deadly sharks swim the dark oceans, where storks swooped to hunt for shrimps and rested on laurels and masts for you to glimpse, fearing the roaring sound of waves. What are the things that the poet noticed? Well, he says that since the kingdom is very vast, it ranges from midland to the shore of the ocean. So one can hear the rumbling waves of the ocean, which is quite far away. And there are several groves of coconut trees, several groves of mango trees. There are exotic wood trees like sandalwood, rosewood, laurels also. He says every inch that they move on, they will come across something new. They will have a variety of flowers, they will have a variety of fruit trees, and sometimes when they enter a part of town or village, they might notice that children would be playing freely on the streets. They'll be building sand castles, they'll be chattering among themselves, and under the shades of the trees, elders would sit and chat amidst themselves, discussing without any differences in their class or creed. This is something very unique that happened only during the time of Sangam period. And he also gives a very detailed description about how peacocks freely stuttered across the streets. And he also has seen a lot of jackfruits, very ripe, burst open, and the peacocks freely peck on them to eat. He says that the jackfruits were very deep and dark in color, and the peacocks who fed on them were slightly dazed by the sweetness of the jackfruit. A lot more that it has to offer, and these are truly the assets that were found in the Chola kingdom. Now we know this is quite similar to another description that you might have come across in one of the famous novels that dealt with Chola King and kingdom. Yes, I am talking about Ponniyin Selvan. Now we know where Kalki Krishnamurti got his inspiration from. It is indeed from Porunaraatrupadai and the description by Mudattama Kanniyar. Teempennai madal sepavum, kol tengin, kulaivalai, kolungandal, malarnahattu, துடிக்கடிஞை குடிபாகத்து யாழ்வண்டின் கொலைக்கு ஏற்ப கலவம் விரித்த மடமஞ்ஞை நிலவு ஏக்கர் பல பெயர்த்து. Resting on tall palm trees' naves that bunch palm fruits, plantain groves, glory lilies, laurel trees, large owls that hoot on shores like wide-mouthed drumbeats. Bees buzz like the lute strumming hum. Peacocks strut on sand dunes, make you numb, like moon that shines gorgeously. Here, the poet says that along the seashore, we can find a lot of palm trees, and the palm trees will be full of hanging, ripe palm fruits. And along it, one can also find plantain groves where the plantain or the banana tree would be bent down, unable to bear the weight of ripe banana bunches. And these owls will be as large as drums, and their hooting sound would sound as if large drums are being beaten. He also says that along the shore one can find huge group of peacocks just like that roaming about. They will simply not be the colorful ones. We can also spot white ones amidst the colorful ones. And compares this sight to the moon shining brightly in the dark night sky. தேன்னெய்யோடு கிழங்கு மாறியோர் மீன் நெய்யோடு நரவு மறுக்கவும் தீங்கரும்போடு அவல் வகுத்தோர் மான்குறையோடு மது மறுக்கவும் குயிஞ்சி பரதவர் பாட நெய்தல் நுரம் பூங்கனி குறவர் சூட கானவர் மருதம் பாட அகவர் நீல் நிற முல்லை பல்தினை நுவல. Nectary honey bartered with Murphy, fish oil exchanged for toddy. with sugary canes, flattened rice exchanged, fatty meat chunks of stacks with toddy exchanged. Fishers sing wavy tunes, mountaineers sport exotic garlands, sweet tunes of the tribes from woodland, blue jasmine wines sported by farmers. Here, the poet gives his description about what sort of exchange goes among the people. We get a glimpse of different people from 4 different regions of the kingdom. According to Sangam literature, the entire land area was split into 5. Kurunji, Mullai, Marudam, Neidal and Palai, where Kurunji dealt with people of the mountain ranges, Mullai dealt with people of the forests, Marudam dealt with people of the farmlands or agriculturalists, and Neidal were people along the seashore or fisherman community, and Palai of course denoted desert. Of these, King Karikalan's kingdom covered 4 major of them, which is Kurunji, Mullai, Marudam and Neidal. So all these 4 regions were interconnected because of the barter system. Barter means to exchange whatever things they had. So people of that period had specific produces from their land. For example, the poet says, "Teen karumbodu aval vahuttor." Now, sugar canes were bartered with flattened rice. Some people, the agriculturalists, would have had aval, that is flattened rice. And people from the forest would have wild canes. These were exchanged. And people on the mountain had a rich source of honey. So they exchanged honey with the yams that were available with the forest people, and so on. So there was an active exchange of produces, and the land was thus rich in terms of resources. The king made sure that the people interacted with one another and the produces were exchanged so that none of them were left out. This is one good example of how a kingdom should be run. கானக்கோழி கதிர் குத்த மனைக்கோழி தினை கவர வரைமந்தி களி மூழ்க களினாரை வரை இருப்ப தன் வைப்பின் நாள் நாடு குழியே மண்மருங்கினான் மறு இன்றி ஒரு குடையான் ஒன்று கூற பெரிது ஆண்ட பெருங்கேண்மை அரணோடு புணர்ந்த திறனறி செங்கோல் அன்னோன் வாளி வெண்வேல் குருசில். As the wild stray fowls peck on grains of farmers, domesticated hens steal on millet grains, monkeys dive and cackle while they play, where storks fly across the black waters to hilltop to stay. With 4 lands under his cool shade, he ruled them fair, and care that never fade brought them under one roof for world to praise. He would rule longer with geniality and just all the same. He with victory, scepter of immortality. Long live he, king of victories. The poet praises the king, saying he is the most friendly of all, and definitely his name would be etched to immortality. Even though the king would die one day, his name would live forever. And true to his words, King Karikalan is still very popular because of so many acts of his. One such act is his act of building a dam across the river Kaveri, Kallanai Kattu. And because of this act, he is also called ruler, emperor of ecosystem. He actually regulated the water supply in such way that the rice bowl of southern India, that is the place called Tanjavur, is always fertile. That is where the entire paddy production happens. So we know why, because it is constantly wet by River Kaveri because of the Kalani Thittam of Karikalan. And the poet does not miss out the river either. So he concludes the entire beautiful poem with a vivid description of River Kaveri. Kaveri Valam. மன்னர் நடுங்கத் தோன்றி பல்மான் எல்லை தரன் பல்கதிர் பரப்பி குல்லை கரியவும் கோடியேறி நைப்பவும் மருவி மாமலை நிகழ்த்தவும் மற்ற அக்கருவி வானம் கடற்கோள் மறப்பவும் பெருவரன் ஆகிய பண்பியில் காலையும் நரையும் நரத்தமும் அகிலமும் ஆரமும் துறை துறைதோறும் பொறை உயிர்த்து ஒழுகி நுரைத்தலை குறை புனல் வரைப்பு அகம் புகுதோறும் புனலாடு மகளிர் கதுமென குடைய கோனிக்குயத்தின் வாய்நெல் அறிந்து சூடு கோடாகப் பிறக்கினாள் தோறும் குன்று எனக் குவிய குன்றா குப்பை கடுந்தேற்று முடையின் இடம் கிடக்கும் சாலி நெல்லின் சிறைக்கோள் வேலி 1000 விளையுட்டு ஆக காவிரி புறக்கும் நாடு கிழவோனே. The never fading Kaveri. The scorching stature instills fear in adversaries as he spreads his rays to shine on all, dries out tiny basils, fires up lofty branches, waterfalls dry out weak and more ranches. Darkened clouds oblivion to precipitate, parching dryness with nothing spatterate, nutmeg and lemongrass, eaglewood and sandalwood, every shore that holds them to rest. Loud foaming river that flows with zest, to fill those ponds and lakes for dames to drench, as they bend and cut with sickles the paddy entrench. Stack 'em up high in neat segments, every day new stacks added to the heap, that never lowers but grows several stacks steep. Carelessly strewn red paddy fields, with a fence that runs 1,000 measure yields, O protector of the lush land where Kaveri flows. The poet explains that deserts are because the rains have completely forgotten them. Whereas here, the rains do not bother coming over here at all because the Kaveri is already there, always there for the land to be fertile and evergreen. He says that the cloud would forget to sponge up the waters from the oceans and rivers, and it would keep staring at the place filled with water. It will forget to precipitate, the rainfall would not happen, but still the land will be fertile because of Kaveri. He says that people will stack the husk and hay along the roadside, and the stacks will always be higher. It will be as high as a small hillock, and the other side will have the paddy cleaned and ready to be sacked. Now, both the mountains or hills of paddy will compete against each other because they are from immeasurably wide farmlands which hold paddy. They will be carelessly strewn. The birds would come and peck on them. Nobody would even bother because round the year they will receive paddy unlimited. And they would also share the same with the rest of the country. Thus, the poet says that this land where the Kaveri flows is indeed blessed, and doubly blessed because they have Karikalan as their ruler. This poem is a small tertiary root which we have to hold on to. Without the roots, we will not grow up. We have just started to sprout up with the help of Sangam Literature. I hope you take us to a wider audience. Please like, share and subscribe. Thanks for watching.